This is HID Remapper Custom Board V6. In this video I'd like to show you how you can use it as an adaptive controller for the Nintendo Switch. What is an adaptive controller? It's a game controller that may look something like this. Typically it has some buttons of its own, but the important thing about it is that it lets you customize your setup to your individual needs by connecting external buttons and joysticks through these 3.5mm jacks, and also in this case USB input ports. The Nintendo Switch has its own accessibility controller. I don't have one here, but it looks like this. It's called the HoriFlex. It's similar to the Xbox adaptive controller. It has 3.5mm jacks and USB inputs for external buttons and joysticks. Okay, back to HID Remapper. In case you haven't heard of it before, HID Remapper is a universal adapter for USB input devices with very flexible remapping capabilities. As you can see, this specific version, the V6, has 18 3.5mm jacks that you can connect external buttons to. It also has 4 USB input ports on top. The USB-C port we will eventually connect directly to our Switch or the Switch dock, but first I'm going to connect it to my computer to set it up. Okay, this is what the configuration interface for HID Remapper looks like. It's just a website. You don't have to install anything. You can use it from any computer that has Google Chrome. You can even use a Chromebook. I'm not going to go into detail about everything here. I'm just going to show you some basics. Let's say we have two external buttons and we want to use them as buttons A and B. Let's plug them into HID Remapper using a cable with 3.5mm plugs. It doesn't really matter which input ports we use. The ports don't have predetermined functions, so we just plug into any port and then we assign the function we want that button to have in the configuration interface. Okay. First thing we need to do is we're going to tell HID Remapper that we want it to work as a Switch controller. There's a few device types that it can emulate. By default it works as mouse and keyboard, so we change it to Switch gamepad. I'm also going to disable this option, pass-through, so that it doesn't try to map anything automatically, only the things we explicitly tell it to. Okay, back to the Mappings tab. Everything in HID Remapper revolves around mappings. Every mapping has an input and an output. What it means is that when HID Remapper receives this input, it sends out this output. If we click on the button on the input side, we get a list of possible inputs. If we click the button on the output side, we get a list of possible outputs. What if we don't know which of the inputs on this very long list is the one we want to map? This is where the Monitor tab comes in. The Monitor tab shows you a live view of what inputs HID Remapper is receiving from the devices connected to it. When we press the buttons, we should be seeing the inputs that they generate. We are not seeing them right now because first we need to connect to our HID Remapper. It's already physically plugged into the computer, but we also need to click Open Device, select our device, connect. Okay, now when I press the buttons, we can see that they generate these inputs, GPIO 9 and GPIO 11. So that's what we need to use in our mappings on the input side. There's a little shortcut here. Instead of looking for GPIO 9 on that long list, we can just click this little plus button and it will create a mapping for us with the input already set. Let's do that. Let's delete the empty mapping that we don't need. And let's set the output for this mapping. I want it to work as the A button. Okay, let's do the same for the other button. Back to the Monitor tab. The other button is GPIO 11. Click the plus button. set the output on the mapping to be the B button. Okay, now this configuration is not saved to our HID remapper yet. For that we need to click Save to Device. If we were to unplug this from our computer and plug it into our Nintendo Switch, these two buttons should work as A and B. But before we do that, let's try another thing. Let's plug a USB joystick into one of the USB ports and set it up so that it works as the left analog stick. Okay, the joystick is now plugged into one of the USB ports on HID remapper. The USB ports don't have predetermined functions either. We have to tell it what we want this joystick to function as. Let's do the same thing. Let's go to the Monitor tab and see what inputs this joystick sends. When I'm moving the stick, we can see that the numbers here are changing. These are the inputs for the X and Y axis of the joystick. Let's map them to the left analog stick. Again, we click the plus button. Then we set the output to left stick X. Same for the Y axis. Okay, while we're at it, let's see if we can map some more things on this joystick. Let's map two of the buttons. When I'm pressing the trigger, we can see that it generates this input. Let's map it to the X button. And when I'm pressing the button at the top, we can see that it generates this output. Let's map it to the Y button. Okay. The joystick also has this HUD switch on top that looks like a perfect candidate for mapping it as the D-pad. Let's see what input it generates. It's this one. And let's map it to the D-pad. Great, we now have a pretty reasonable configuration. Let's save it to HID remapper. Save to device. And let's plug our setup into the switch. I'm actually going to put the switch on its dock and plug into that so that we can capture the video output from it. But it would work just as well plugged into the switch directly in portable mode. It also works with the Switch Lite without issue. Okay, let's go to the controller testing menu, and spoiler alert, I'm already using the joystick and the buttons to go there. But let's make it really clear that the buttons do what we told them to do. The external buttons work as A and B. The buttons on the joystick work as X and Y. And the HUD switch on top works as the D-pad. Okay, let's also try the analog stick preview. And we can see that the joystick works as the left analog stick. Great. And this is how you use HID remapper as an adaptive controller for the Nintendo Switch. Of course, what we just did is a pretty basic setup. we could add more buttons, or we could connect another USB joystick and make it work as the right analog stick. We could also connect other USB devices like gamepads or even regular keyboards and map them the way we want, and they would all function as one gamepad from the console's point of view. Okay, that is it for this video. If you want to learn more about HID Remapper, including how to get one and what else it can do, take a look at the GitHub repository. If you have any questions, or if there's some related topic that you'd like to see covered in a future video, please leave a comment. Thanks for watching.